Now, the March the 18th governorship and state houses of assembly election has officially brought to a close the 2023 general election. Governorship elections were held in 28 states, while the state legislative poll held in all 36 states of the Federation. With these winners await to be sworn in to kickstart the governing process. This election year brought many surprises within the political space, ushering in a wave of new entrants who emerged victorious in the respective positions they contested and robbing perceived old hands in the game. Also, some states still remain in contention. The governorship election in states like Adamawa, Kebbi, Enugu, and Abia have been declared inconclusive by INEC and as such remain without substantive winners. All those not satisfied with the outcome of the various elections from February the 25th to that of March the 18th can now, by law, proceed to courts of appropriate jurisdiction to seek redress. Joining us from our Abuja studio to discuss the conduct of elections and outcome, as well as factors that shape the victory and losses of various political parties and their candidates, is former Commissioner for Information, Edo State, Kasim Afegbua. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Right. It's been a mixed bag of reaction to the conduct of the just concluded governorship and state house of assembly election. A lot of persons have blamed INEC. On the one hand, there are those who have also commended INEC. And then the president has even come out to say that in the whole, now it's obvious that democracy has matured in Nigeria. Let's get a sense of what you make of the conduct of the governorship election.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of this morning discussion. I think if you look at the outcome of the elections generally in the country, you will agree with me that INEC has improved tremendously. And you cannot treat INEC in isolation. INEC is a product of the Nigerian society. Whatever blame you heap on INEC, we as citizens of the country also must share from that blame. Because INEC will not commit infractions on its own. It takes two to tango. So when you see people approaching INEC officials, ad hoc staff, and all of that with a view to manipulating the electoral process, it will be wrong for you to just conclude by condemning INEC. And don't forget, the issue of ad hoc staff in the conduct of elections has always been a problem because their loyalty is not to INEC. They are called ad hoc because after the elections, they vanish to thin air. So within the period, within the scope of that election, they will try as much as possible to maximize the opportunity and get whatever they can get in the process, knowing full well that politicians will naturally approach them to manipulate the process, do one thing or the other. But essentially, with respect to the conduct so far, I think we have seen upsets. We have seen PDP governors losing the election. We have seen APC governors losing the election. And so, for me, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's a step forward. We can take it up from here and see how we can deepen democracy in the entire process. The courts, the fight has now been shifted to the courts. So, and in line with civilized conduct, I think people should bury their grievances and seek redress in the law court without throwing up unnecessary violence across the country.
Right. So would you then agree with the president that perhaps this has shown that democracy has matured in Nigeria?
Yeah, that's true. Democracy has come to stay. We are still growing. It's a fledgling democracy. We are barely 24 years old. And when you are when you are growing, you are bound to have some level of hiccups, but your ability to manage those hiccups is what defines you as a country that is ready to embrace democracy. There is no democracy that is perfect anywhere in the world. Even the American democracy that has spent over 250, 260 years, they still have their challenges. The election that threw up Joe Biden was heavily criticized by Donald Trump, and almost rubbished the entire essence of American democracy, But the president was speaking from the perspective that no matter what we go through, there are always platforms and opportunities for us to look inwards and see how we can fine-tune the electoral process and make it healthier. People must try as much as possible to behave like sportsmen. It doesn't necessarily mean that all your wishes and aspirations will be fulfilled in an electoral process, but if you behave like a sportsman and you take your fight to the tribunal and the courts, it is better than throwing up sentiments or whipping up sentiments that will tend to unsettle the system. So that's why you see when they say go to court, it doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome of the courts are known. No, we have seen elections that have been overturned by courts in this country. So it is better for you to seek redress in the law court than trying to, provoke, sentiments, provoke crisis in the polity, and such that will, shake the very foundation of our democracies.
All right. Now, there's the matter of the level of violence that characterized the conduct of the March the 18th election, and that has generated a level of concern amongst the discourse that a lot of Nigerians have been having. We saw the case of ballot box snatching. We saw even the snatching of beavers, and then we saw some level of intimidation leading up to the election. What do you make? What are your concerns with regards to these issues that I just mentioned?
Okay, first and foremost, I think I am of the opinion, very strong one for that matter, that we need to demonetize our electoral process and our democracy. There is too much of, people get into offices impecunious, poor, so to speak. But when they come out of that office, you see them swimming in all manners of opulence, all manners of riches overnight. So, rather than demonetization, the mere fact that people see you going in as a poor man and coming out as a rich man would naturally motivate them to deploy all manners of approach, resources, and what have you, to get to that position so that they too can get rich quick. But if you demonetize the electoral process and even the perks that come into that office, a senator, for example, a federal House of Rep member, House of Representative member, even a governor, you know him not to be rich before he got into office. But coming out of office, you see the way they throw money around. So people will continuously, want to get involved and deploy all manners of manipulation, desperation to make sure that they succeed in the election. That's one. Secondly, it is the function of this monetization that leads to the idea of people snatching ballot boxes, snatching beavers. Do you blame INEC? I think the security must be awake to its responsibility during elections. I have a problem with the fact that most police officers at polling units, they don't carry gun. So they too are also at the receiving end to thuggery and violent conduct by those who are supporters of politicians and supporters of political parties. So my understanding was that in going to this election, the president said if you snatch a ballot box, they should be shot at sight. But who is going to shoot when the policeman you are seeing there is not carrying gun? So you allow the thugs, a reign of terror. And at the end of the day, even the INEC presiding officers and others are often helpless when there's nobody to protect them. But what becomes the end product? I expect that if beavers are stolen, the result that should come out should not reflect the wishes of the people and should be cancelled and all that. But oftentimes, there are also pressure from different quarters to ensure that the wrong things are done just to please, the consciousness of those who are the ones, motivating this violent conduct. So we are going to be having this kind of trials. We are going to be having this kind of errors. But what defines us is our ability to ensure that the next time we find solutions that will mitigate this kind of obvious lapses, infractions that leads to violence and violent conduct.
Before we went on the break, we're speaking with former Commissioner for Information, Edo State, Kasim Afegwa, and he was speaking to the matters of the electoral violence that some Nigerians have been speaking to that characterized the just concluded governorship election. And before we went on the break, Mr. Afegwa, you were talking about mitigating the obvious lapses that has led to what we have seen with regards to electoral violence. And the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, recently spoke to the matter of the Electoral Offences Act, and he says that has to be finalized by the Ninth Assembly so as to address this matter of electoral offences effectively. Do you see that as the way to go?
Well, it's one of the ways to go. When you have a law in place, it provides you the background and the foundation upon which you can address, and interrogate outcomes at elections with respect to infractions or those who are perpetrators of all the lapses, crises, and infractions that we observe. Because it is not, for me, it is not even just about the fact that there has to be a law in place. It has to do with having the political will and the capacity to apply those laws and pursue certain cases to logical conclusion. Because oftentimes we complain about prosecution. You'll be shocked that those who participated, who were arrested in 2019, they still have their cases in court. You may not even have judgment meted out to them because of the slow administration of our justice system. So it is not just about having a law in place, it's about having the political will to pursue and prosecute those persons and get judgment so that it serves as a deterrent to those who may want to commit crime. But even without that, there has to be a deliberate and conscious effort to sensitize, conscientize, and mobilize the people to be able to know what an electoral offense is and the gravity of sin. By the time you sit back and people just think they can take laws into their hands, you will not be helping the cause of democracy. You will not be helping the cause of credible elections and credible outcome. For us to get to this level we are was a function of the previous electoral armed robbery, so to speak. That was why they came up with beavers. Before beavers, there were other methods of card reader and all of that. So we have improved to beavers, but we have to take it further by ensuring that citizen participation is based on their knowledge of the offenses, and these offenses are punishable under the laws. And they have to be seen that people are being prosecuted and jailed so that it serves as deterrent. But in Nigeria, when people are being prosecuted, you'll be surprised that political leaders will be the one making cases for them, and before you say Jack Robinson, they escape the law through the back door. So it's a huge responsibility on our hands, both as political party members and even the INEC, to carry out sensitization, conscientization, and mobilization of the citizenry for them to know their civic responsibility without inhibitions, without being prevented from doing so by acts of thuggery, hooliganism, and what have you.
Right. There was another matter that even the president-elect had to react to, at the end of the conduct of the governorship election, which has to do with politics of identity. And he has said that now that this is done, it is time to heal. What do you say to that?
Well, the speeches by the president-elect have been very, very soul refreshing. So refreshing in the sense that he's been magnanimous in victory. He has extended hand of fellowship to other contestants to see the bigger picture of the challenges facing the country and to see how they can offer advice, by way of ideas, initiatives that can help to drive the national narrative. As we speak now, there is some level of national apathy. Apathy in the sense that there are protestations in different geopolitical zones. The IPOB is there, insecurity in the north, Yoruba nation in the southwest, and so many other protestations within the subnationals. What the president-elect is saying is that it is time for us to come together and articulate a roadmap that will build national cohesion, that will deepen national conversation, that will also provoke, constructive engagement, collective bargaining with a view to ensuring that we put the interests of the country in the front burner of our national discourse so that the gains of this democratic process could sink down to the rural areas, down to the localities, without any let or hindrance. You see, leaders must learn how to use language, and their language must be temperate in such a way that it will appeal to the sensibilities of the citizenry, and not necessarily, provoking undue sentiments, promoting hate speeches, and all of that. I want to commend the initiative of the president-elect. He's been very fatherly thus far, and I know that as someone who likes to engage, he's definitely going to deepen our national conversation once he gets into office May 29th, 2023.
Right. Outcome being acceptable, there are those who have said it is relative, that perhaps people need to learn how to perhaps manage loss when it comes to elections, because it is one person just has to win. We all cannot win if we are contesting as an election. How do people begin to manage their losses? What should they know when it comes to losing an election?
Well, you see, a lot of what we see is actually the outcome of emotions, uncontrolled emotions that when let loose, can lead to violence, can lead to all manners of negative outcome. You see, it's natural in human endeavor for people who lose elections or even who lose any contest to be angry. I give you a typical example. As a footballer, just last week, Ronaldo, his team in Saudi Arabia lost a match, and they were also dethroned from being leaders of the league table. When Ronaldo was going out of the pitch as a consequence of that loss, he kicked, a water bottle out of anger. That means, as a footballer, he was pained by the outcome, and he wasn't able to hide his pain, his anger, to the extent that he had to kick a water bottle on the pitch. You see, if that were to be in a political circle, it will send wrong signals to those who are pro-Ronaldo or pro the politician who has expressed that kind of anger. So at every point in time, we must learn to accommodate, absorb, and manage our anger, and believe that in the spirit of sportsmanship, that outcome of election, only one person will come out victorious. No matter your grievances, no matter your reservations, what you do as civilized citizens is to seek redress in the law court. I'm happy that some of them have gone to court now, the Labour Party and all of that. They have cried, they have agonized, they have lamented, but the end point is that you must go to court. You should go to court to use that platform in a civilized manner to ventilate your reservations about the elections. And that also helps to deepen our electoral jurisprudence. And so, for me, one person must come out victorious. And in this case, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has come out victorious. And I'm so happy about that. But people say, oh, there were no celebrations across the coast. I say, I don't know what kind of celebration you want. I am celebrating. People are celebrating. What is key for us is even to sympathize with Tinubu. And I'm sympathizing with him because he's going to be inheriting a lot of shortfalls and fallout from this election, and even governance that has not been rated in an El Dorado manner. He has a lot of challenges on his hands. The expectations are so high. He needs to hit the ground running from the first day in office. We need to build national cohesion, national conversation. We need to heal wounds across both the one he's going to be inheriting and the ones that came out as a function of this election. So, rather than even say celebrate, we should be sympathizing with him that we are going to be he's going to be facing a lot of challenges of how to rally around the country, rein in all the centripetal and centrifugal forces to be able to create a movement and that will put the country in the front burner of positivity and not negativity. Both at the local and international level, we have a lot of things on our hands. But I'm happy that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is an engaging personality. He's a pro-democracy activist. He knows the nuances, he understands the dynamics, and he knows that Nigeria is sitting on a delicate logic. And so, for that reason, he must reach out to people. He must build national confidence in the minds of the people, and Nigerians are going to see an essentially different president when he gets sworn in May 29, 2023.
Now, I want to ask this question, the lessons that those who have emerged should learn and how they should handle governance moving forward. Because you mentioned earlier that Nigerians have shown how conscious they are now, especially with regards to the power of their vote. How should those who have emerged move forward with this lesson that they are seeing with the outcome of the election?
It's a onerous responsibility that has been thrust upon them. It is a huge responsibility on their shoulders. And because of the realities of the present elections and the outcome, the upset, it is no longer going to be tea party. It is, if you are elected into any office, a lawmaker, House of Assembly, a governor, House of Rep member, a senator, and the president, it's a huge responsibility that you must perform. You must fulfill your mandate. The covenant upon which you were given that mandate must be pursued vigorously to ensure that you deliver on them. You see, these days, gone were those days when manifestos of parties were jettisoned, items captured in manifesto or your blueprint or your vision statements are being abandoned. No. The reality of Nigerian electorates and voters is that people are ready to vote you out when you don't fulfill those aspirations, when you don't meet up with their yearnings across board, both at the rural level and at the urban level, at the national level and the subnational level. So for me, it's a responsibility. They must live up to expectation. It's a huge task, no doubt. We have a lot of challenges. We have infrastructural decay. We have even the psyche of the ordinary man has been affected by this issue of Naira swap. I saw your report a while ago talking about people not accepting old currency note even when the CBN has spoken. And if they still expect the president to speak and all of that, no matter what, whatever policy you put in place that visit untold hardship on the citizenry, such a policy is a bad one. Nobody should, contemplate dressing the whole issue in kid gloves. Naira swap, the timing was wrong. It could be a good idea. The timing was wrong. And even the operation of that Naira swap has been of tremendous setback to the economy of the country than what it attempted to achieve. Don't forget that even in this election, if it was meant to stop vote buying, we still had arrest by EFCC, about 65% thereabout, of those who were involved in vote buying and what have you. So what I'm advocating is a system that promotes, credibility, that promotes transparency, that promotes, some level of high involvement of the citizenry. They must own policies of government. They must buy into it. And in doing that, you have to be consultative. You have to be constructive. You have to be collective. In the way and manner you engage the issues. Nigeria is very delicate. Nigerian citizens are easy to govern if you come up with transparent process of doing things, if you come up with policies that are tested, policies that have the therapeutic effect to heal the wounds of the land. That way, people will buy into your policies and help you to drive the wheel of progress. But anything short of that, you might just be rotating on the same axis.
Earlier, you mentioned that there is the need for us to fine-tune our process. INEC's image has been on the front burner with a lot of persons criticizing the process. When you look at the presidential election and the governorship election, what are the areas we need to fine-tune ahead of the elections that will come up?
The first thing to fine-tune is our attitude. The attitude of the average voter, the attitude of those who are contesting, the attitude of participants, the attitude of even onlookers. I've had cause to contend with some commentators who didn't participate in this election, who didn't even contest, who didn't vote. They didn't come home to vote, but they are the strongest critic of the outcome. I went to my village to vote. I participated in the process. I have more cognate experience of what goes on in my locality, in my polling unit, than someone who was sitting and sleeping in his bedroom in London or elsewhere, talking about what happened in my local community. So we must get more and more people involved. 23 million participants, voters in the presidential election, for me, is not good enough. We should be striking at 40 million, 50 million out of 90-something million voters, so that the population of those who are voting will be more representative of the total outcome and total population of the country. 23 million have just participated in the presidential election. 8.8 million thereabout had elected a president. So, and the president is going to preside over 200 million people, according to statistics. So, we need the buy-in of everyone. He needs to reach out. Those who are onlookers are the most dangerous set of people. And so they must fine-tune their attitude and their mindset. If it doesn't work in their way, they shouldn't lament. If those who participated are also angry, there has to be a way to appease them using credible legal process to seek redress, rather than calling for civil unrest, rather than calling for violence and what have you. So I am of the opinion that INEC is not from high heaven. INEC is part and parcel of the Nigerian society that has been decadent in so many ways. It's part of the Nigerian attitudinal orientation that is in the backward drive. And so when you see INEC display the INEC ad hoc staff helping politicians to manipulate the process, rather than you condemn INEC, you have to condemn the man who also comes, to try to manipulate the process using INEC ad hoc staff. So we must be conscious of our laws. There has to be punishment for those who have abused the processes. People have to see that the law prevails. But when you stay 4 years prosecuting one electoral offender from 2019, they are being kept in jail and they are feeding fat on Nigerian resources, and yet you say you are trying to help the process, you will just be defeating the whole idea of trying to ensure that future electoral engagement will be better.
All right, we'll have to leave the conversation here now. Former Commissioner for Information, Edo State, Kasima Figboa, thank you for your time on the program. All right, so many things highlight